Should we better choose our gears like Primoz Roglic in the latest Giro? First of all, congrats to Primoz for his miraculous last-moment Giro victory, which should alleviate his mere loss of the Tour back in 2020. But this victory, hopefully, also has much more practical meaning to all of us, amateur cyclists. Roglic and Jumbo Visma took quite a new technical approach to gearing on the last deciding stages. Roglic switched to extraordinary setup bikes for the ultimate climbs of stage 19 and 20. Yet we don't know 100% what exact components he used. From all the available media, it looked like a gravel-style setup made of the following SRAM components: a huge 1044 cassette, a matching XPLR rear derailleur, and a 44-tooth 1x chainring, resulting in 1-to-1 lowest gear for climbing. We also yet don't know how much of an impact this had on the GC result. Maybe Primoz would still win with a regular setup, and maybe not. But the team effort to switch his bikes in pursuit of 1-to-1 gear ratio is anyway meaningful. Have you experienced the feeling of wasted legs even on some short segments of 15+% gradients? I'm having it again and again on some mountainous rides. The problem is quite simple. Once we cannot sustain our usual comfort cadence already in the lowest gear on such a tough section, the only option is to drop our cadence. If you are a natural grinder or at least trained to produce high output at low cadence, this helps, but not for long. The example of the Giro winner Roglic proves that we should maybe pay more attention to our gearing instead of just raw suffering on these climbs. A typical factory setup of a modern road bicycle is a 52-36 crank coupled with an 11-30 cassette. This means 1 2/10 to 1 lowest gear ratio. This is impressive 20% higher to what Roglic had. So he is much more trained, much more powerful, and still went for 1-to-1 ratio. No wonder we suffer so much while challenging comparable climbs with a 20% higher gear. Yes, he had this 1x low range setup just for the climbs and would never opt for it for a full stage. However, even as amateur cyclists, we could benefit from 1-to-1 ratio without sacrificing our top range that much, if we were just a bit smarter, or if a bit smarter to help us were the bike manufacturers. Shimano, for example, offers 50-34 crank just as well, which can be coupled with 11-34 cassette. Even Dura-Ace got this cassette option with the latest 12-speed gen. 34-34 means 1-to-1 ratio. Actually, I can see from forum threads that some smart cyclists have opted for this setup since long ago. The problem is, however, they had either to replace their factory components or go for a custom build from scratch. Both are expensive options. Why not to offer us such setup as factory default? Yes, it sacrifices our top ratio a bit, but compensates with much more needed bottom ratio. How often do we suffer climbing without an extra low gear? I do a lot, and I see lots of other amateur cyclists do the same all over the world. How often do we suffer without an extra high gear? I barely touch my top gears, and I don't see others using them. There aren't that many amateur sprinters around. For what sake are we offered these sprinter-geared bikes then? Conclusion. My Merido reactor, the one at the back, has 52-36 crank and 11-30 cassette. Converting this typical setup into a proper one feels irrational, unless the gears wear out. I'd be so happy to simply have it properly geared from the factory. The Shimano step towards gears with Dura Ace combined with the Giro success from Jumbo Visma gives a slight hope of things moving in the right direction.